It started with a phone call I almost ignored. The kind that hums against your palm and feels heavier than it should. I was sitting by the window that evening, watching the sun slide down behind the oaks, turning the yard gold before surrendering to dusk. The air smelled like rain and cut grass, her favorite. My wife had been gone 3 days, and the house still felt like it was waiting for her to walk through the door, humming, fussing about dinner, telling me to sit, eat before it gets cold. The phone buzzed again. Ethan. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hear my son's voice. The other part remembered the silence he'd given me during her final days. She'd asked for him, weak and breathless, one night before the morphine took her words. Did he call today? She whispered. I told her he was busy. That was the last lie I ever told her. When I answered, his voice came through too bright, too casual. Dad. Hey. Listen, about the funeral, we can't make it. At first, I thought the connection dropped. What? He cleared his throat. It's Nicole's birthday weekend. We booked a trip to Cancun months ago, non-refundable. You understand, right? Mom wouldn't have wanted us to cancel. I stared at the photo on the table, the one of her with her arm around him on his graduation day. Her smile was wide, his even wider. She'd driven halfway across Texas just to surprise him that morning. Now, he couldn't drive 3 hours to say goodbye. I didn't yell. Didn't curse. Didn't say a damn thing. I just sat there, watching the bourbon in my glass tremble under the weight of my heartbeat. When you reach my age, grief and anger start to sound alike, one burns, the other freezes, but both hollow you out the same way. Sure, I said finally, my voice barely human. You two enjoy yourselves. He sighed in relief, mistaking compliance for peace. Thanks, Dad. We'll call after we get back. The line went dead. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, soft and rhythmic. It sounded like time running out. I sat in that chair until dawn, staring at her empty seat across the table. Every creak of the floorboards echoed her laughter. Every silence carried his absence. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't come with shouting. It comes quietly, in the empty space at a funeral, in the silence that fills a house after a goodbye. It's not what people say that breaks you. It's what they don't. When the day of the funeral came, the church was filled with flowers she would have loved. People hugged me, told stories, cried soft tears. I nodded through all of it, but I wasn't really there. My mind was on the ocean, picturing my son and his wife clinking glasses on some beach, smiling at the sunset while I lowered the only woman who ever truly loved me into the ground. That night, when I got home, I scrolled through social media. And there it was, the photo. Ethan and Nicole, drinks in hand, sunburned and happy. The caption read, "Celebrating life with the one who matters most, red heart." I didn't comment. Didn't call. I just sat there, letting that sentence etch itself into my bones. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Grief hardened into something sharper. Love dimmed into distance. And somewhere deep inside that silence, a seed took root, one that would take months to grow, but when it did, it would change everything. Because when your own son chooses comfort over compassion, when he celebrates life while you bury the woman who gave him his, you stop being a father. And you start becoming something else. He showed up 4 months after the funeral. No call, no text, no warning, just the crunch of tires on the gravel drive, the white Tesla nosing under the oak tree we planted when he was 8. Back then its trunk was thin enough for him to wrap his arms around. Now it threw shade over half the yard. Funny how some things grow strong only when you stop tending them. I opened the door before he could knock. "Well," I said. "Look who remembered where he came from." Ethan smiled, that polite, surface-level smile he'd perfected somewhere between business meetings and dinner reservations. He carried a sleek gift bag, black ribbon, gold logo. "This is from Nicole," he said. "She thought you might not be eating right. Protein bars, organic tea, stuff like that." His tone tried for warmth, but it felt rehearsed, like a man reading sympathy off a cue card. I stepped aside. "Come in." He hesitated a second too long before crossing the threshold. The air inside the house still held the faint trace of her perfume. He looked around, eyes skating over the photos on the wall, the old piano, the worn-out rug, as if taking inventory of assets instead of memories. "Place looks good," he said. "So do the ghosts," I answered. He gave an awkward laugh and sat down on the couch. I joined him. The silence between us settled heavy, filled only by the ticking of the clock she used to wind every Sunday evening. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Dad, I came because I could use a little help. Just temporary." I didn't move. "Help with what?" He smiled again, bright, persuasive, salesman smooth. "Nicole and I found a new house. Great neighborhood, big yard, close to work. Problem is, my credit took a hit, long story, nothing serious. If you could just sign as a co-borrower, we'd get a better rate. It's really just a formality." A formality. That word rang in my head like a bell tolling at a funeral. I studied him. His tie was too perfect, his watch too new. He spoke fast, confident, like someone who's already sure of the answer. For a heartbeat, I saw the boy he used to be, wide-eyed, stubborn, trailing me around the yard asking how engines worked. That boy had built model planes on this very floor. The man sitting here now just wanted leverage. A formality, I repeated. Like a funeral, maybe. His smile froze. "Dad, come on. Don't start that again. Mom wouldn't have wanted." "Don't tell me what your mother would have wanted," I said quietly. The air shifted. His posture stiffened. "Okay," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I didn't come here to fight. I'm asking for help, that's all. We're family." "Family," I echoed. The word tasted like metal. "You remember that now?" He looked down at his hands. "I know I screwed up. I should have been there. But what's done is done. Mom's gone. We've got to move forward, right? Move forward." I almost laughed. Some people treat grief like luggage, they think you can just set it down and walk away. I leaned back in my chair. "Leave the papers," I said. "I'll take a look." Relief washed over his face like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Thanks, Dad. Knew I could count on you. Nicole's gonna be thrilled." He stood, offering a handshake instead of a hug. His palm was dry, firm, transactional. When the door closed behind him, the silence rushed back in, thick and unforgiving. I looked around the room, the chair she used to sit in, the photo of us on our anniversary, the half-empty bourbon glass on the counter. Everything exactly as she'd left it, except me. On the table sat the folder he'd left behind. Smooth, expensive paper. His cologne lingered faintly on it, sharp, synthetic, out of place. I didn't open it. Not yet. I placed it beside her photograph. She was smiling in that picture, her hand on his shoulder, eyes full of pride. I wondered what she'd see if she looked at him now. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and sat down. The ice cracked, echoing through the quiet. "You'd know what to do," I said to her picture. "You always did." The photo didn't answer, of course. It never does. But her expression seemed to shift in the light, soft, knowing. Almost like she'd already seen what I hadn't. I picked up the folder, ran my thumb along the edge, and finally opened it. Mortgage agreements. Signatures. Figures and clauses I didn't need to understand to feel the arrogance behind them. He'd already filled out my name. Only the signature line was blank, left open, like he believed my compliance was inevitable. He hadn't come for forgiveness. He'd come for a pen stroke. I closed the folder and set it back down. The bourbon burned on the way down, but it steadied my hands. When I looked at her photo again, something inside me clicked into place, not anger, not vengeance. Just clarity. Because love can forgive almost anything. But respect, once you bury that, nothing grows on the grave. That night I sat by the window again, listening to the wind scratch against the glass. The same window where I'd sat the night he called from Cancun. The same chair, the same ache, only quieter now. I stared into the dark and whispered, "You were right about him." The house said nothing back. It didn't have to. After he left, the house felt heavier than before. Not empty, just burdened by the kind of silence that makes you realize how much noise love used to make. I sat there for a while, the bourbon glass sweating against my palm, staring at the folder he'd left behind. It looked harmless, a few sheets of paper, a tidy stack of ink and promise. But I knew better. I'd spent my life signing things that meant more than they seemed, enlistment forms, mortgage papers, hospital consent lines. Every one of them had changed something permanent. And this one would've, too, if I'd been the same man I was before the funeral. I opened the folder again. Mortgage details, cosigner fields, insurance clauses, all of it perfectly organized. His handwriting was everywhere, fast, confident, careless. There was even a note in the corner, "Thanks, Dad, you're the best." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't the arrogance that got me. It was the assumption. He'd already decided what I would do. The same way he'd decided what his mother would have wanted. The same way he'd decided a vacation meant more than a farewell. I closed the folder. Across from me, on the mantel, her photo caught a slice of moonlight. She was smiling, that small, knowing smile she used when she was about to call me out on my nonsense. I could almost hear her voice, "You can't fix people, Jack. You can only show them who they are." I whispered, "Then it's time he saw." I poured another drink and sat in the dark, the house humming with memory. Every shadow carried her laughter, every quiet corner her absence. The longer I sat, the clearer it became, Ethan didn't need my money. He needed a mirror. One that would finally show him what he'd become. The next morning, I made coffee the way she used to, slow drip, no sugar. I stood at the window, watching the first light touch the trees, and something inside me settled. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about punishment. It was about restoration. Balance. Grief had turned me into a ghost, and ghosts have no power. But truth can still move through the living. By mid-morning, I had a plan. Not one born of anger, but of patience, the kind of patience only loss can teach. I pulled out a yellow notepad and wrote 3 sentences. 1. Gratitude cannot be inherited. 2. Love cannot be demanded. 3. Forgiveness must be earned. Underneath, I added, teach him all 3. That was the moment I stopped being a father blinded by grief, and started being a man who remembered who he was. I opened the old filing cabinet in the study, the one she always said made the room smell like dust and taxes. Inside were the papers we'd signed years ago, the will, the insurance policies, the property deeds. Her signature was there beside mine, delicate but steady. We joked that day about how morbid it felt, sealing our lives in envelopes. I'd said, "At least he'll never have to worry." Funny thing about promises, they only stay true if people do. I called James, my lawyer of 25 years. He was more than a professional, he'd been at our wedding, held Ethan when he was born. "James," I said, "I need to make some changes." He paused. "To your will?" "To everything." He didn't press for details, just said, "I'll bring the paperwork tomorrow." That evening, I sat down to write a letter. Not to Ethan, to myself. It began. "He thinks I'm signing his future. But I'm signing his lesson. Not out of spite, but love. Because real love doesn't hand out forgiveness, it earns it. I folded the letter, slipped it under her photograph, and went to bed for the first time in months without the taste of bitterness in my mouth. When I woke at dawn, I didn't feel tired. I felt clear. The air smelled like rain and beginnings. Before breakfast, I called the bank, then the accountant, then the title office. Each conversation was polite, precise, and final. The wheels were turning now, slow, silent, inevitable. By noon, every asset had been reassigned to a trust under her name. The house, the savings, the land, all of it moved out of reach. Not to hide it. To protect it. To give it purpose again. When the last signature dried, I stood at the window and whispered to the photo on the mantel, "You always wanted him to learn responsibility. Well, he will." The wind outside rustled the trees, soft and approving. That night, I dreamed of her. Not the way she looked at the end, pale, fading, but the way she'd been when we were young. Strong, laughing, alive. In the dream, she took my hand and said, "Don't break him, Jack. Just make him see." I woke up before dawn, the echo of her voice still warm in the dark. And for the first time, I smiled. Because that's exactly what I intended to do. I didn't rush it. Revenge done in haste is just anger pretending to be justice, and I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. For the first time since her death, the house no longer felt haunted. It felt useful. Like a place where something important was about to happen. I spent that morning sorting through drawers, old boxes, and dusty folders, the paper bones of a lifetime. Bank records, deeds, certificates. It's strange how your whole existence can be folded and filed into envelopes. Each one held a memory disguised as bureaucracy. By noon, James arrived. He looked older than I remembered, gray hair, soft eyes, that same patient calm he'd always carried. He set his briefcase on the kitchen table and said, "You sound like a man with a plan." "I sound like a man who's done waiting," I replied. We spent hours going through documents. I explained what I wanted, the creation of a charitable trust under my wife's name. Every cent I owned, the house, the savings, the company shares, would move there. Not hidden, not erased, just protected. The only thing Ethan would inherit directly was the choice to earn it back. James listened carefully, writing notes in that tight, clean handwriting of his. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "I've never been surer of anything," I said. "This isn't punishment. It's education." He nodded slowly. "Education can be expensive. So can ignorance," I replied. We finalized the papers by evening. I signed them one by one, my hand steady. Every stroke of ink felt like a piece of me setting itself free. After James left, I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching his taillights fade down the road. The sunset spilled orange light through the trees, the same color as her hair when we first met. I took it as a sign that she approved. That night, I wrote another letter, this time addressed to Ethan. It wasn't to be sent yet. It simply began. "Son, there are two kinds of inheritance, the kind you receive and the kind you build. I hope one day you'll understand the difference." I folded the letter, sealed it with blue wax, and placed it beside her photograph. The next day, I called him. "Ethan," I said evenly, "I looked over your papers. Stop by tomorrow, and I'll sign them." There was a pause, then a rush of relief through the phone. "Really? Dad, that's great. You don't know what this means." "Oh," I said quietly, "I think I do." When he arrived the following afternoon, the weather had turned, bright sun, clean sky, the kind of day she used to call a beginning day. I'd cleaned the kitchen, set out fresh coffee, even opened the curtains. The house looked alive again. He stepped inside, his cologne sharp and expensive, his smile rehearsed but slightly uncertain. "You look good, Dad," he said. "Guess retirement suits you." "I suppose it does," I answered. "Sit down." He laid the folder on the table. I had my own beside it, thicker, heavier, older. He slid the papers toward me. "Just need your signature right there," he said, tapping the line. I took my time. Opened my pen. Looked him straight in the eye. "You trust me, don't you?" I asked. He laughed nervously. "Of course. You're my dad." "Good," I said, and signed. My name looped across the page in calm, deliberate ink. He exhaled, smiling wide. "Thank you, Dad. Seriously. Nicole's going to be so happy." "I'm sure she is," I said. He gathered the folder, ready to leave, when I spoke again. "Oh, one more thing," I updated my will. "James will send you a copy next week." He frowned. "Updated? Why?" "Just housekeeping," I said with a shrug. "Your mother always hated clutter." He nodded, distracted, already half out the door. "Take care of yourself," I said. "Always do," he answered, and left. When his car disappeared down the road, the stillness returned, softer now, like the house had finally exhaled. I sat down at the table, my signature still glistening faintly on the page, and whispered, "You'll understand soon, son." That night, I took the freshly signed mortgage papers and placed them in the safe, beside my wife's wedding ring and the folded flag from my service years. All the things that meant something real. Then I poured a drink and walked to the porch. The sky was clear, stars sharp as glass. Somewhere, miles away, Ethan was celebrating his new deal, believing the world had bent to his will again. He didn't know that while he'd been building walls of comfort, I'd been laying foundations of truth. And tomorrow, those foundations would begin to rise, in her name, not his. For the first time in months, I felt no anger, no bitterness. Just quiet satisfaction. Because revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it signs its name in silence, and lets the future do the talking. It took less than 2 weeks for the storm to arrive. James called first. He came by, he said simply. "Your son looked like a man who just found out the ground isn't as solid as he thought." I smiled faintly. "He got the copy, then?" "He did. And Jack, he's not taking it well." "I wouldn't expect him to." I thanked him and hung up. Then I waited. By the third day, I heard the tires on the gravel again, that familiar hum of entitlement pulling into my driveway. But this time, the sound didn't raise my pulse. It steadied it. He didn't knock right away. Just stood outside for a moment, probably rehearsing his outrage. When he finally entered, he didn't have the same posture as before. The confidence was gone. His hair was uncombed, his voice uneven. "What the hell is this, Dad?" he demanded, waving a stack of papers. "You gave everything away. To some charity in Mom's name." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, really looked. My son, 32 years old, standing in the same doorway where I once carried him on my shoulders. Same house. Different man. "Yes," I said finally. "I did." His jaw dropped. "Why? You said you'd help. You signed the papers. You told me everything was fine." "I did help," I said evenly. "I gave you exactly what you asked for, my signature." "Don't play games with me," he snapped. "You cut me out of everything. Do you even hear yourself? This is insane." I stood slowly, walked to the window, and stared out at the rain starting to fall again. Always rain. It seemed to visit whenever truth did. "When your mother was alive," I said, "you were her world. Every morning she asked if you'd called. Every night she prayed you'd show up for dinner. You were all she talked about. He shifted uncomfortably, the papers trembling slightly in his hand. And then, when she was dying, I continued, she asked for you one last time. I told her you were busy. I lied to her to protect you. To spare you from guilt. And while she was slipping away, you were lying on a beach, toasting to life. His voice cracked. Dad, that's not fair. No, I said quietly, turning toward him. It's not. Fair would have been her having a proper goodbye. But life isn't fair, is it? You of all people should know that. You built a whole philosophy around convenience. He looked at the papers again, shaking his head. So this is how you fix it? By humiliating me? This isn't humiliation, I said. This is consequence. He threw the papers onto the table, their corners scattering like broken promises. You're punishing me for one mistake. One mistake, I repeated, almost to myself. You really believe that? He met my eyes then, angry, wounded, desperate. I missed one day, Dad. One day. People make mistakes. Missing her funeral wasn't a mistake, I said. It was a message. The silence that followed was long and heavy. Rain tapped against the window, steady as a metronome. I gestured toward the papers. You want to understand what I did? Read the last clause. He bent down, scanning the fine print. His eyes widened. Volunteer work. 1 year. At the Margaret Harris Foundation. Yes, I said. If you want your inheritance, you'll earn it. You'll spend a year working there. The house, the money, the shares, they'll all come back to you after that. But not before. He looked up, stunned. You're serious. As a man can be, I replied. Consider it the only test worth taking. He laughed bitterly. Nicole will never agree to this. Then she's welcome to leave, I said. She'll be lighter for it. His face crumpled with disbelief. You'd really do this to your own son? I walked closer, stopping just short of him. I'd do it for my son, I said softly. Because the man standing in front of me isn't him. But maybe a year among people who've lost more than a vacation might bring him back. For a long moment, he didn't speak. His breathing was uneven, his eyes red. Finally, he whispered, You think this will make me love you again? I shook my head. I don't want your love. I want your respect. The rest is up to you. He stood there, trembling, caught somewhere between pride and shame. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. The sound of the door closing was softer this time, not slammed, just resigned. His car backed out slowly, tires hissing on wet gravel. I stood there for a long while, listening to the rain fill the silence he left behind. Then I walked to the table, gathered the scattered papers, and stacked them neatly. One corner brushed against her photograph. I turned it upright again and whispered, He's starting to learn. That night, I didn't pour a drink. I didn't need to. The quiet itself was enough. Revenge had never been the goal. Clarity was. And finally, the air felt clear. A full year has passed since the rain that day. 12 months of silence broken only by the occasional envelope from the foundation bearing my wife's name. Each one contained reports, photos, or handwritten letters from volunteers. They didn't mention Ethan by name, but I saw him there, in the edges of the pictures, sleeves rolled up, face tired, eyes older. The Margaret Harris Foundation sat on the edge of town, a quiet place for those rebuilding their lives, widows, veterans, single parents who'd lost everything but hope. It wasn't glamorous work. It was peeling paint, lifting boxes, fixing roofs, listening to stories no one else wanted to hear. And somewhere among those cracked walls and broken people, my son was learning what loss really looked like. The first few months were hard, I know because James told me. He called, he said once, wanted to quit. I told him the clause was ironclad. He cursed your name. I expected that, I'd replied. But then the calls stopped. One cold November morning, I received a letter addressed in handwriting I knew by heart, uneven, rushed, once confident, now humbled. Dad, I don't know how to start this, so I'll just say it. You were right. I didn't understand what you were trying to teach me. I thought money meant security. I thought comfort meant happiness. But these people, they have nothing, and somehow they smile more than I ever did. I've been helping rebuild houses for families who lost everything in the storm last spring. Yesterday, a kid about 8 years old hugged me after I fixed his bike. It broke something open in me. Maybe that's what Mom felt when she looked at me, that kind of love that doesn't ask for anything back. I'm sorry I missed her goodbye. I'll carry that forever. But I'm trying to be the kind of man she'd recognize again. Thank you for giving me the chance. E. I read it twice, then a third time, then folded it and set it beside her photograph. For the first time in a long time, I whispered, he's finding his way. The days began to pass gently after that. The house no longer echoed with ghosts. It breathed again. I filled the garden with new life, roses for her, rosemary for memory, and a small oak for him. Every morning I'd walk out with my coffee, touch the leaves, and imagine them talking to one another beneath the soil. By spring, I'd stopped counting the months. Peace has no calendar, it just arrives quietly, sits beside you, and waits for you to notice. Then, one evening, the gravel crunched again. The sound didn't scare me anymore. I looked out the window and saw him standing by the gate, same frame, same eyes, but something was different. His posture was humbler, the sharp edges smoothed down. I opened the door before he knocked. Hey, Dad, he said. His voice was low, almost careful. Hey, son, I replied. He held out a small cardboard box. These are for you. The volunteers made them. Said you were the reason they have a roof this year. Inside were photographs, smiling faces, fresh paint on old walls, a rebuilt playground. At the bottom was a note signed by dozens of people, in loving memory of Margaret Harris, for teaching us that love is work. I swallowed hard. She'd have liked this. I think so, he said. We stood there a moment, both unsure how to move forward. The years of distance hung between us like fog. Finally, he spoke. I finished my year. The lawyer says I'm eligible for the inheritance now. I know, I said. It's all ready when you want it. He hesitated. That's just it. I don't want it. Not yet. I asked James to keep it in the foundation. That hit harder than any apology could have. I stared at him, trying to find words. You don't have to, I know. But I need to. I think Mom would have wanted that. We both smiled then, faint, tired, real. He looked around the yard, hands in his pockets. You've been planting again. Something like that. He crouched near the young oak. This one's new. For you, I said. He nodded, eyes glistening. Guess I better not waste it. We went inside, and I made coffee. Real coffee, strong, bitter, honest. He took a sip, grimaced, and smiled. Still too strong. Still better than Cancun, I said. We both laughed softly. It wasn't loud, but it was alive. After dinner, we walked out to the porch. The sun was sinking behind the trees, the sky glowing the same gold it had the day she died. For a while, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Finally, he said, I used to think forgiveness meant pretending nothing happened. And now? I asked. Now I think it's something you do when you stop needing to be right. I nodded. Your mother would have liked that answer. He looked at me then, really looked. Do you forgive me? I sipped my coffee and thought for a long time. Forgiveness isn't a word, son. It's a road. You're already walking it. He exhaled, relief flickering across his face. That's enough, he said quietly. The night grew cool. We sat together until the stars came out, the same ones I used to point out to him when he was a boy, the Big Dipper, Orion, the one he always said looked like a kite. When he finally stood to leave, he turned at the door. You gonna be okay here? I've been okay for a while now, I said. Go home to your wife. You've got work to do. He nodded, smiling that same small, genuine smile I hadn't seen since he was a child. See you soon, Dad. The car disappeared down the road, its lights fading into the dark. I sat there, listening to the crickets, the rustle of leaves, the whisper of peace settling back into place. Later that night, I walked into the living room, took his letter from the mantel, and placed it inside the same box as hers. Side by side, the woman who taught me how to love, and the boy who finally learned what it meant. I turned off the light, letting the moon pour through the window. It landed on the family photo, the three of us, younger, laughing, whole. I didn't turn it face down this time. I just looked at it and said, "We did good, love. We did good." Then I sat back in the same chair by the window, cradling my coffee, watching the horizon lighten with the first hint of dawn. For the first time in years, the silence didn't ache. It simply rested. And so did I. If this story spoke to you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can continue the journey by clicking the box on the left. Thank you for being here.